The next speaker for the night is Prue Francis. Prue is a lecturer in science professional practice and the course director of the Bachelor of Marine Science at Deakin University. Her research investigates the extent to which ocean literacy is being taught in schools across Australia, and she explores innovative methods and initiatives to enhance this through research, education, and outreach, including through picture storybooks. So welcome, Prue.
Thank you, Nicole, and welcome everybody. I'm coming to you from the Wadawurrung country. I think I'm not alone. According to the chat there's quite a few of us, and I do believe a few ocean groves are there too. That's where I'm based at the moment. So let's get started. I do recognise I've got a few of my students online too, so they won't be new of how I present and make it quite interactive. So my name is Prue Francis. I'm from Deakin, as Nicole mentioned, and hopefully today I'm going to talk to you about ocean literacy. So it's very nice follow-on from what Zara's doing with the Great Southern Reef. I'm taking the knowledge and trying to get the knowledge out there, but also measuring the impact. So today and tonight, I'm going to sort of talk you through the steps and the journey that I've taken to get there and what's in front of us into the future. So just a bit of a background of who I am. I know some of you online probably know who I am quite well, but for others, as Nicole mentioned, I'm at Deakin and I'm the course director of the Bachelor of Marine Science at the Geelong campus. And I do have a marine ecology biology background, and also I am an ex-secondary school teacher. And I also used to work as the education coordinator for Reef HQ Aquarium up in Townsville. So I've got that sort of marine education tourism type background. And so I guess it's no surprise that I do teach marine science units at Deakin, but also I have a really passion for employability units as well, and making sure that our students at Deakin are leaving us with really strong employability skill sets. And so I've taken that into the research field as well. So I bring my education background, but also my ecology and biology background into my research. So my PhD was on seaweeds, and particularly Neptune's necklace, the little poppy seaweed that you see on rocky shores. And I was looking at the dispersal potential of that particular seaweed. So I haven't been able to walk away from it. I still love anything seaweed related, as you can see me down here on the beach. So if you often see some strange lady looking at seaweed and getting really excited on an Ocean Grove or Queenscliff beach, it's more likely me. So come and say hello. So I'm looking at seaweed, but particularly seaweed cultivation. So looking at local species and the potential for them to be farmed potentially in Australia or the Great Southern Reef. And then also today's purpose, I'm going to be talking to you about my research in ocean literacy. And so I'm located down at our Deakin University Queenscliff Marine Science Centre, which we've been there now for, this could be our third or fourth year down there. So we're co-located with the Victorian Fisheries Authority, which is, if you've been to Queenscliff and you drive past the building with all the grass on it, where the Marine Freshwater Discovery Centre is, that's where I'm located. Deakin has its own research and teaching facility there now. So let's have some fun with some interactivity. I don't know, this hasn't really worked well. Let me just flick it back. There we go. This is Mentimeter. So some of you might have used Mentimeter before. It's basically an online polling system. So you can become part of the presentation, so to speak, and help tell the story that I want to tell. So what we need to do, and hopefully Cade will put this in the chat for you to make it a bit easier, but if you follow the link up the top, which has www.menti.com, if you go to that, if you've got your browser open or on your phone, whatever it might be, and then you'll get prompted to put in a code. So the code's just 169308881. And then you'll have one question to answer, which is what we have in front of us. And I'm expecting it to be quite biased tonight based on the audience we have. And the question is, have you interacted with the ocean before? And what I mean by interacted, it could just be as simple as I've swam in the ocean, I've dived, I didn't swim, but I visited the ocean, put my feet on the sand, and I kind of tiptoed closely to the water's edge, but didn't go in. That's still an interaction. You might have been on a boat and gone fishing or just gone for a tour. That's still an interaction. So whatever it might be, say yes or no, and we'll see how we're looking. And as I said, I think I've pre-predicted what the answer is going to be here. And all the scientists out there, I think we could probably safe to say, is it going to be statistically significant? All right. I don't know how many people are voting, but I'm assuming we had about 60 online. So we're getting a majority of people voting. So looks like everyone has interacted with the ocean. So that's fantastic. The next question, though, is how do you feel best connected to the ocean? So that interaction that you're just thinking of, what was it? Is it because you go surfing every day? Do you like to dive? Do you like to, like me, go and look at seaweed on the beach, or just go for a walk along the beach, go for a swim, whatever it might be? This is a word cloud. So you basically just need to write a couple of words in there, and it'll just sort of keep popping up on the screen. So it is anonymous. We won't know who's put what in. It just visually we'll see how we're all connected. And you might notice, for anyone that's local on the Ballerine, you might notice the dive spot behind us. This is Ozone Rec at Indented Head. And these, if any of my students are online that were in 107 in trimester 1, this might be you in the background. We took 90 students snorkeling at this site over 2 days, which was absolutely fantastic, before we were locked down, of course. All right, so we're seeing quite a lot of different connections coming up. Swimming and diving, snorkeling and swimming are sort of the main ones that are coming up, but there are a few: walking, rock rambling, photography. So the ones where we see in bold, it generally means that more people are putting those in. So that's kind of the most common. So it's like a graph, a word graph. So you would assume that swimming, diving and snorkeling are the most common for everybody that's connected. So we've got about 54 responses. So that's fantastic. So thank you for having a go at that Mentimeter. And the students are probably like rolling their eyes going, oh, here she goes again. Good old Prue with her Mentimeter. But it helps set the scene of how I want to take this presentation. So quick facts, and Sarah's already mentioned this, but everyone said yes, they were connected to the ocean in some way or form. So, and yes, tonight's audience might be a little bit biased, and so the greater community might have had a few no's. But in a snapshot, Australia, if you think about it, is an island, so it's a marine nation. We're all connected to the coast. And so there's a rough data, but around about 70% of Australians live near the coastline or visit the coastline at some point in their life. And we rely on it. So we saw those different connections on the second slide there with Menti, and some of those connections were quite variable of how we use it. And so as a user, it can either be an environmental connection, a social, economic or cultural reason as to why we feel that connection to the ocean. And so in a snapshot, we rely on the ocean in many different ways, and we all have our own reasons why, and they may differ. Probably a lot of our reasons with our audience tonight are the same, but different stakeholders using the oceans have different reasons why they feel that connection. But we still really don't know or haven't explored much of the ocean. And so Sarah mentioned that we still need to go out there and understand the Great Southern Reef and the ocean just in global terms. We haven't really explored it. In fact, we've explored more of the moon than we have of our ocean. And so we need to continue to keep doing that in order to keep protecting and restoring and managing that ocean as well. And we're doing that through our science and through our management and organisations like the Victorian National Parks Association. These are the things that we need to continue to do in order to take our next step into that ocean literacy, and hence why I'm chatting to you today. So we need to, and to do that, we need to make sure that we can continue to feel connected to the ocean and feel it in that either that economic, cultural, social, environmental way, and that we're all using the ocean in how we feel connected to it, but we're doing so in a sustainable and equitable way. And if we're achieving that, we're actually going to be achieving what we call a blue economy. And you might have heard that term thrown around before. And that's basically utilising our ocean and the resources that our ocean provides to us in the most economical way, but doing it in that sustainable and equitable way, taking into account all our connectedness to that ocean. But in order to do that, we need to understand it. Yes, we need to protect it. We need to restore it. We need to sustainably manage it before we can even get to that point. But we also need to tell people about it. And that's what Sarah was talking about too, is trying to bring as much of our community know about the ocean, but also specifically in Australia, the Great Southern Reef, because we've all heard of the Great Barrier Reef, but what we haven't heard is the Great Southern Reef, and it does contribute a huge amount to our economy in Australia. I think it's around about, this is probably old data, about $10 billion a year. And so you've got your fisheries and tourism and different aspects that all contribute to that economy. So if we were to stop looking after it and start exploiting it, then that money is not going to be coming into our nation. And we do rely on that income and livelihood to be able to do what we can do as a nation. So we need to be able to communicate people about it, connect them, as Sarah was saying, to the Great Southern Reef in order to keep protecting and using it in a sustainable way. So what I'm trying to do with my work is to help drive that communication, but do so in a slightly different angle to what Sarah and Sarah's team are doing, is doing it from a research perspective. So looking at ocean literacy. So what is ocean literacy? You might have heard it, you might not have heard of it. But so hopefully today I'll sort of clear up the ambiguity around it. And so first thing I thought was, how am I going to explain this? I thought, well, I'd go straight to Google if I was to try and figure out something. That's, we all do it. We Dr. Google, we use Google for lots of different things. So I went and typed in literacy, and I thought this showed it really, really nice and clear, the two definitions of what literacy is. And the first one you can see there on the screen is the ability to read and write. And yes, if we want to learn about the ocean, yes, we need to write about it. Yes, we can read about it. That's fine. But the second dot point that you can see here is the competence or knowledge in a specified area. And this is where ocean literacy has really sort of originated from, is knowing about the ocean, because that's the specified area. So in a nutshell, ocean literacy has been defined by this sentence now by the UNESCO in 2017, is an understanding of the ocean's influence on us and our influence on the ocean. So it's that bringing that connectivity again, and how we're using it, and what it means to us if it was sort of taken away. And from that same UNESCO group back in 2017, what they thought is, well, how are we going to get this out to the greater community? And they came up with what is known as the Ocean Literacy Principles. And you can see these 7 principles on the screen now. I'm not going to go into too much detail about them, but basically what they are saying is that an ocean literate person, and you're thinking, yeah, I'm an ocean literate person. An ocean literate person is the person that's defined as somebody who understands how we use the ocean, and how we are connected to it, and what it means to us. But the underlying factor of that is these 7 principles. And so what the UNESCO group are trying to do is say, hey, we need to make sure that everyone has knowledge of these 7 principles in order to be an ocean literate person. So underneath these 7 principles, there's actually another 45 fundamental concepts that underline in here. So the nitty gritty sort of science concepts that underline those 7 principles. So now what they're trying to do, not so much here in Australia yet, is trying to embed these 7 principles into curriculum. So into schools, into education programs more broadly, and this is sort of starting to gain traction around the world. So how do we achieve it? As I said, public awareness. So someone asked the question earlier, how can we get the knowledge of the Great Southern Reef out there? And it's just simple little things, it's things such as those messages of turn off the light to save energy. That does gain traction if you start doing it, and other people will start modeling your behavior. And the same thing is with the Great Southern Reef. Start using the Great Southern Reef in whatever terms you might be doing every day. It's like, oh, I'm going for a walk on the Great Southern Reef, to your mate next door. I'm like, oh, what's the Great Southern Reef? And it just starts those little conversations there from there. So it does start to build traction, and we're starting to see more of it in the scientific community now. I know that our marine team at Deakin, we now utilise the Great Southern Reef term in our research work, and hopefully now we'll start to see that happening more, not only on social media platforms, but also in research publications too down the track. So informal education providers can start to use it, media, not-for-profit organisation, community groups, and that follow-on effect can be quite wide in reaching those different wider community groups that scientists can't sort of reach in the scientific community. Then there's also school and education, so embedding the ocean literacy principles in the curriculum, and what they've called that is the ocean literacy frameworks. So if you're sitting there and you're a teacher and you're going, I'm not putting that into the curriculum. Have you seen the Australian curriculum? No, thank you. Yes, I've been a teacher as well, so I totally understand and can relate to trying to embed this into the curriculum. So that's what we're trying to do here, is try and find creative ways of how we can embed it without putting more work onto teachers and more content for students to have to learn. So I'll come back to that in a moment's time. This is just a really quick snapshot of globally how ocean literacy is looking at the moment. And this is data extracted from a recent paper that's just come out from Kelly et al. In 2021. So it's looking at not just school programs, but global programs of ocean literacy. And so it could be free online resources similar to what Sarah was showing before that you can go and access. It could be short online courses or whatever it might be. This is where it's currently at. So remember, ocean literacy term came about in 2017. So you probably might be sitting there going, not really much happening. It really is lacking, but it's only been a short introduction to where that was. So maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, we might just start to see some of these percentages going up. And particularly, I'd like to see our little 8% over in our continent start to exceed and be sort of the world winners overall in ocean literacy, considering we are that marine nation. And these are just some examples of sort of the founders of the ocean literacy principles. So you can feel free to go and Google some of these organisations. But of course, they won't focus on the Great Southern Reef. These are sort of more their own or widely, broadly sort of marine environments. And I haven't looked at them in detail, but I could probably guarantee that they probably have a bit of a tropical flavour to them. So I do recommend watching the space on the Great Southern Reef website and looking at the more resources that are going to come closer to us, and so that students and classrooms and teachers can actually relate to the marine environment compared to what some of these resources might be. It's just, you know, different marine environments, different seaweeds, different looking fish. It's hard to connect with. But so this is all well and good. So it's great to have all these resources. And in fact, you could go down Google, you could be spending hours looking at what resources are down there and get quite overwhelmed by the content. So what I'm trying to do is look at what's there, and our team at Deakin CED is trying to see, all right, we want to improve ocean literacy in Australia because we now know it's lacking. How are we going to do that? What are the barriers to that? But then also, because we're research scientists, we want to evaluate what the impact is actually having. So if we are going to implement these ocean literacy principles in Australia and do it in whatever way we might do it, is it actually connecting students to the ocean? Is it going to improve our knowledge of the ocean, and is it having the impact that we wanted it to have? So that's sort of what our mission is trying to do in our team. And as you can see here, we've got 3 main goals, and that's, of course, the first one, we're trying to identify barriers, which we're sort of going through with different stakeholders at the moment, assessing that. And then also looking at the trialing solutions and then evaluating those solutions, whether they worked or not. And so if it didn't work, let's go to plan B, and then assessing that impact, as I said, about the connecting to the ocean. Did it work? Did it not work? So here, the current research that I am doing, so I can never do a presentation without showing off my 2 kids. So you can see my 2 little girls there. So the first research I'll focus on is a new area, which is on the right-hand side that you can see little video showing off there, is using a virtual reality and technology. And this is some early work that my colleague, Dr. Adam Cardellini at Deakin is producing. So credit to him for putting this little video together, is to create, using this technology to create an immersive environment. So, you know, a person will put a headset on and they'll be taken to the Great Southern Reef. And specifically for this particular content that you can see, it's going to be a sponge garden adventure under the sea. So making that immersive connection, if a student or somebody can't get to the reef or can't for some reason physically go diving or see what's underneath, this is another way where they can form that connection to that marine environment, and then hopefully, you know, create those ocean stewards as we want to. So if anyone is looking for a PhD and is interested, we are actually looking for a PhD student to lead that program into next year. So please reach out if that's of interest to you. But at the moment, what I wanted to sort of finish up on is what we're currently looking at, and that's overall arching children's literature and sort of seeing where we're at. Can we use books, children's books? We all love children's books. We love reading. We probably read them as a kid. If you're in a bookshop and you see one of the ocean, you probably have a quick flick to see what it looks like. So we sort of thought, okay, teachers use picture books all the time. They can relate to them. They feel comfortable using them. Can we use ocean picture books to teach ocean literacy principles without having to add more to the curriculum? Can we pull the Australian curriculum, a picture book, ocean literacy principles all together and achieve the same thing without putting too much pressure and too much time to the teacher? So that's what we're trying to do at the moment. So we've been surveying teachers. We've also been surveying informal education providers. So my honour student, Maddie O'Brien, who's online tonight, has been doing just that this year. And then Prue Francis, my PhD student, is looking at the barriers that teachers are facing with incorporating marine science into their classroom. And then Kat is currently putting together a professional development program for teachers to be able to incorporate children's books into their classroom and teach marine science in a really effective way. So also from that, what we've also been doing, and this was a really fun project, is we went and read 100 odd picture books. We evaluated them, we wrote a paper about it. And that was probably one of the career highlights, is having to read 100 kids' books and then writing a paper about it. So basically what we're trying to do there is looking whether or not what the current status of is ocean picture books. So if we're going to sort of say to teachers, here, have a picture book and teach about the Great Southern Reef, is it actually going to teach them about the Great Southern Reef, or is it going to teach them about the Great Barrier Reef? So this is what we tried to do, is evaluate where the gaps are in ocean picture books. And we did find that there wasn't many focused on the Great Southern Reef. And we also found that, trying to sort of highlight a female marine scientist to tell about the Great Southern Reef. So cueing our latest project, which is not quite typical science route, is Paul Venzo and myself and Kate James, as the illustrator, have developed our own children's picture book, which will be coming out next year, and it's called The Great Southern Reef. So it's going to be a lovely story about Professor Seaweed, as you can see on the picture here, taking two children along the beach and discovering things that you would typically find on a beach walk in the Great Southern Reef, and also finding animals and seaweed that you would typically find along the Great Southern Reef, so that if children are going to learn about this and read these books in a classroom or at home, they're going to go, oh, I saw that shark egg on the beach, or I saw Neptune's necklace when I went for a walk, and can connect to the ocean in a more effective way. And hopefully the teachers can also connect with the Great Southern Reef in a really effective way. So this is our next project, and it's going to have teaching resources. That's going to be published by Cyro Publishing, and they have online free teaching resources as well. So I do think it'll be a scalable resource booklet that comes with it too. So watch this space for next year. And I think that's it. Wrap it up. So I'm happy to take questions if anyone's got any questions or wants to learn more about ocean literacy. There is a test you can take to test whether you're ocean literate or not. It was a scientific paper. So if you wanted to have a trivia night one night when we're out of lockdown and test whether you're an ocean literate person, then please let me know and get in touch, and I can send you that paper. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Prue. That was really interesting, and I'm certainly very excited to see the book when it comes out. I'm also quite curious to see how I would go at the ocean literacy test.
Aren't we all?
So I've noticed a few questions coming in that I'm actually going to save at the end, because I think it'd be kind of cool to do it in a bit of a panel way. There's a few kind of like interesting questions in there. So I'll stick with the ones that are very specifically on your work, Bruce. One of the first ones that I saw was, I know you work with VR. Can you please tell us a bit about the evidence there is between the virtual nature or ocean experience and pro-environmental behaviours?
I don't know too much about what research is out there, but from my little understanding, I think that it's okay. There are some limitations with using VR, particularly with younger children, and using the motor sensory sort of type development. It has been shown that adults are more coordinated and can react to virtual reality better than what children can. There's also a couple of other negatives with using virtual reality, which you wouldn't think of, but it's actually a thing, is head lice. of spreading head lice by putting these headsets on. Motion sickness is another one. But in terms of creating environmental behaviour change, I would believe potentially yes. How you assess that, whether it's a long-term effect or a short-term type impact, I'm not sure. In my past, when I've worked at the aquarium, we used to run, or they still do, virtual outreach programs where a scuba diver was in the aquarium and was talking to the students all over the world. And we had a lot of environmental messages during those outreach programs. And a lot of the times it was just simple, just switch off your light tonight. And I think a lot of the times some of these students hadn't even, heard about Australia before, let alone seen a tropical ocean, and then being able to connect with that and connect with a scuba diver and someone who was actually a marine biologist, which they'd never talked to before. They sort of thought, oh, well, if they're telling, I want to protect that turtle that I saw on the screen, so I'm not going to use plastic bags anymore. So whether it might have helped, they might have gone home and told the parent, did that make a change? I'm not really sure. Let's say, yeah, we hope so.
I like this one. Do you have an ocean literature mascot?
Yes, kind of. I don't know if it was very obvious in the logo. It was like little weedy sea dragon, but it's made of books. I don't know if it was quite easy to pick up on. So that's our little Deakin Sea Ed logo. So it's the little sort of books. But moving forward, it would be great to have whether it's an animal or not. But we're trying to make sure that the picture book itself didn't have a marine creature that was a mascot or was a talking. We had to make sure that we want it to be non-fiction narrative, if that makes sense. So still factual but still telling a nice story without bringing in a talking fish.
Fair enough. I think what we'll do now is we will jump in to our next speaker. We've still got a few questions to go, so hopefully Prue can stick on the line at the end of the night and answer a few more questions. So thanks again, Prue.